How's it going, everyone? I'm doing a video for the first time in a while, and I've been inspired by Grim Grizz's stream, what he's doing over on his channel. Link to him in the description. But uh, I've recently found YouTube clips to be something that's quite fun and useful to go back and look at, these long form conversations to pick out the specific parts that are meaningful and useful. So yeah, I gathered some from this past week, and I'll just play them, maybe talk about them a little bit, and yeah, maybe make this like a weekly thing to go back over and take a look at the things that have been interesting me over the week. So let us begin. Let's pick the Groundhog Day one. That's pretty good.
Is that you have to think of history as being you could think of it as like a series of fractals or wheels within wheels, or however you want to talk about it, right? Of you've got, here's the story of history, right? This is what Vodoloskin in like Laura's, right, gets this so beautifully, right? He understands this so well. Is history is not it's not just a line, right? It's not a complete circle. It's more like a spiral, right?
Yeah.
But the way that you live that spiral out is in the cycle of the Christian year, right? As you're moving towards the end of history. And people get hung up about, okay, well, when is that? When is the end of history? Well, the short answer, this is also in Loris, okay? The short answer is the end of history is when you die, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about like when is, the last judgment or the rapture. Like, don't worry about whenever that is supposed to happen. The thing that you know is going to happen is that you're going to die,
Yeah.
right? And for you, that is the last judgment, right?
Exactly.
And so yeah, so to understand the way that you actually participate in that in that spiral, you could say, is by attaching yourself to the Christian year, which has left many little remnants, like little ruins in the world around us today. Things like Groundhog Day, right? Well, when Groundhog Day comes around this year, instead of saying, oh, what a stupid thing, I guess we have 6 more weeks of winter because a rodent in the ground in Pennsylvania says we do, you know, go to church, get a holy candle, light it, keep out the darkness, right? And wait for the light of Pascha.
So even though these clips are short and maybe out of context, um, I still think what they're saying is meaningful and helpful. Because I mean, and you can always go back and watch the whole video, but to really get that context. But um, I mean, I know a lot of people that are, and even myself, that can get kind of caught up on, uh, you know, the kind of apocalyptic stuff that's happening in the world, and you can um, get all worried about that and caught up on that. But it's really your own kind of walk with the Lord that you should be concerned with, and yeah, making sure that that's right for when the day you go and meet Him. Um, and yeah, highly recommend that book too, Loris, because it gets into that question a lot. It's beautifully written too. So let's go to the next one here.
That kind of bothered me was as soon as I come up out of the water and all this stuff, and he comes to me at the side and he says, "Now that you're saved, the devil's coming after you. You watch out." And I called him the next day. I said, "I don't really appreciate that." I said, I didn't come to get saved to be running from the devil. That's not what this is about for me. And it's kind of infantile when you do that. And so, that's the way that I think we do this sometimes as Christians. We make God so small, and we make the devil. And I even hate that word. That's so silly. It's like he doesn't even deserve a name. You make him so big, like like. And if we say things like God wins, but we treat it as if he's not going to, and it just drives me up the walls. And we got all these debates about theology and whatever. I'm like, I don't even give a shit. None of it matters to me. Do not care. And so I'm at that church. I ended up leaving because it was a little weird. It's just a
So, Chad uh, struggled with alcohol and came to God. Um, like many people, struggled to find him, and um, there he was describing some of the kind of cliche things that churches say um, that made him upset. And I thought that was a very insightful thing that he said there. That we always act that like God, like the devil is going to win, and God isn't. And I think that's where um, it's a fault to have that perspective. Um, and we're making less of ourselves and the world when we think like that. It kind of gets back to the kind of apocalyptic uh, worldview that might control us and keep us from doing and being good. Let's see the next one. Let's do this one.
There's an image that I love to bring about, which I think is one of the most beautiful images that Saint Ephrem in his Hymns on Paradise comes about. Is he talks about how the saints, he talks about the rivers of paradise going down into the world. And he talks about them becoming mitigated as they get further and further from the center, right? They become more confused, more mitigated, more polluted, you could say, whatever word you want to use. But then he says the saints go down the mountain, and then they come to the sea, and they walk on the waters. And so it's like that's not a problem. It's actually, if you're looking in the right direction, all of that actually becomes glory. Like even the bitterness of the waters in the end will vanish, and will become something like glory.
Right. So it's like there's no sea, but there's a crystal sea, right?
Exactly.
So the same kind of a thing. Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah, it's participating in the right patterns and can help you definitely navigate the bitterness of the world, and allows you to the metaphor of walking on water. Um, and Peugeot has said before that he thinks the saints of the world hold up society and keep the world functioning. And um, I had a conversation with someone at church today, and they were saying that I forget the lady's name. I think Jess or something like that. She's a paraplegic painter, but she's just saintly in the way she treats people, and in her relationship with the Lord. And yeah, I mean, and then you look at people like that, and you're just inspired. And in the way she's walking on water, you know, the perspective she's had on the world, despite all the bitterness of it in her situation. And yeah, she's definitely giving us a great role model by doing so. And we can all do that, and hold up the world, and sustain it, and generate goodness in that type of manner. Yep. So on that note, let's move on to this one, because it's a pretty similar type of notion.
I talk about the notion that at the top of the Christian hierarchy is something like self-sacrifice, and that it's actually not, and it's not arbitrary. Once you see it and you understand it, you realize that that's actually how reality works. Reality actually holds together through self-sacrifice. I won't go into it too much here. You can find talks on my channel about this, but
self-sacrifice,
you see that in this image.
Yeah, self-sacrifice is the kind of sacrifice that is the basis of marriage, right?
Exactly. Of a true marriage, of a Christian marriage.
The whole idea of like a sacrifice leading to a marriage, right? That's the, because I mean that's the thing, like putting, that idea of like the meta desire, right? And the idea of like let's take all that tension and that disagreement between us because we're competing for the same resources, whatever. Let's take that stuff and let's put it on the scapegoat. Well, that's a temporary solution.
Yeah.
Historically, what's the long-term solution that basically every human culture has come up with for saying, how do we share resources in a way that's going to be sustainable, not just for us, but for the people who come after us, is through marriage.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see this whole image of the parents, or the parents that give their attention, their love to their children, and then don't see their children as competition. They see there's a different relationship of giving and love. It's very different. So you can understand how it's a different image of how reality holds together. One which is still based on sacrifice, rather than, because you can see, like, even in terms of a family, you can understand how, and you've seen it because sadly you see families like that, where a black sheep in the family is useful, in order to cohere the family. It's like,
around that one point,
everything is that person's fault, and so then you're able to cohere. But that this is, like you said, it's temporary, and it's always leading to some kind of revenge at some future time. But that the true nature of a bond of love, which brings about self-sacrifice, is the only one that really holds reality together.
And what happens if you have that black sheep in like a family or even like a friend group, right? The more you commit to that, the less possible it becomes to actually reconcile to that person.
Yeah.
Because there's actually a danger. And I've seen this in families and friend groups and things like this, where there's a danger of, if we all decide we're going to forgive this person, then the thing that was actually allowing us to cohere is gone. And then the group just dissolves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's mayhem all around.
Yeah. And so I think marriage is the famous Monty Python quote, "Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is not a basis for a system of government." Well, I also don't believe that murder is a basis for a system of government, right? Or like a basis for a culture. Not because there's not some truth to Girard's ideas, but because they're incomplete, right? And I think that what we see in Holy Week is the completion, right? There is something of a scapegoat there. Obviously, Christ is both goats, as they say on Lord of the Spirits, right? But the focal point of all of that does seem to be, for me, in the tomb. And you could say the tomb that is a bridal chamber, that's the place where these things can actually join and cohere.
Yeah.
So that video was really struck me this past week, because if you've watched my channel a little bit, I'm a big Girard fan, I mean they have a different idea about the kind of sacrifice that holds society together. Girard's ideas that the scapegoating sacrifice holds society together, or cohere society together, and there's definitely truth to that, as they say, that they describe. But what holds society together over the long term is a marriage of forgiveness and self-sacrifice, and that seems to be very true, and it aligns to what Girard ultimately said, that through his ideas of scapegoating, that Christ, as the foundational victim that revealed humanity's scapegoating behavior, um, and to follow Jesus and his forgiveness and his teachings, that will make the world a better place and keep us from ever increasing escalatory scapegoating violence. I mean, they're saying the same thing, but yeah. So I thought that was really wonderful and something really great to keep in mind. And yeah, we can go to the last one here.
Well, definition of a state is that a state is like it's like a standalone self-governing principality of some kind, right? So so we are the United States, and so the idea is that you had all of these standalone principalities who would come together to cooperate on certain levels, right? And that was let's say that was one vision of what America might be, right? And it's not what came out of the Civil War, and the reason it didn't come out of the Civil War is because there was no higher principality, right? There was no sacred direction toward which each of those individual things could orient themselves, right? And so what ends up happening is, of course, you have some band together against others that band together, and you have a war. So the way that this, I'm going to just say on a symbolic level, the way that the unity of the United States manifests in the post-Civil War area is actually in the person of Abraham Lincoln. And the reason that I believe this is the case is because if you go to Washington, D.C., we have a temple to Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. And it really is a temple. Like, it says it's a temple on the temple, right? There's an engraving behind this. So it's modeled on an ancient temple of Zeus. I forget which one, but it's modeled on an ancient temple of Zeus. And then sitting in the center, in the throne, instead of Zeus, it's Abraham Lincoln. And there's an inscription behind him.
That sculpture, man, it's got a lot of that double nature to it, because they actually, in the sculpture itself, they have one side of Abraham Lincoln, which is kind of ordered, and the other side of Abraham Lincoln, which is kind of disordered.
It's a little like what's going on that Pantocrator
in the icon of the right? Pantocrator.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so behind his head, in an inscription, it says, "In this temple, as in the hearts of those for whom he saved the Union, Abraham Lincoln will be forever enshrined," something like that. And like, listen to the language there. The idea is that Abraham Lincoln has come into your heart and he has saved you. I mean, that's deliberately, like, that's in the language of the Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah.
But at the roof of the Lincoln Memorial, and I think it's very interesting that it's the roof and not, say, the floor, but at the roof of the Lincoln Memorial, you have the engraved names of all the states that were in the Union at the time the memorial was built, right? And so there's this idea then that it's almost like an idea of like the Council of the Gods, right? But it's the idea that we're able to sort of like we have a sacred place, we have a sacred building towards which the states are able to orient themselves, right? And so like they're sort of joined in the person of Lincoln. And one of the interesting things that's happened is that as we start to fracture again as a society, you have people. Originally, it was the right who like maybe 10 or 15 years ago got really down on Lincoln because they felt like he'd obliterated the whole idea of like states' rights or whatever. But now it's the left, and they're down at, like, Lincoln is sort of getting canceled, right? So it's like Lincoln was like the one thing everyone could agree on. It that was the principality, if you will, that was sort of holding this idea of the American vision, the American dream together. And as we begin to fragment, we're losing our trust in that particular principality. Okay, so I apologize. We didn't mean to talk about this, but
it was the 4th of July, not very long.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty interesting idea. Yeah, it's like the marriage of an idea, a figure, a model that civilizations wrap their their patterns and behavior towards. And yeah, I mean, what happens when that breaks down? I mean, we're experiencing that now. There's no traditional or lesser of a tradition uh, to hold us together, and we're battling that out now in the desert, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, something higher. We can orient ourselves to something higher. Um, uh, yeah, but that is all the clips I've had this week. Also, listen to um, what's his name? Peter Thiel's speech at the Oxford Union is quite good. Some interesting things that he said there that are new. And he elaborates further on some of his old ideas. But I can't clip that. And also, Jordan Peterson's new podcast with Joe Rogan is quite good as well, but I can't clip that either. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and maybe got something out of it. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.